Hello, everyone. Welcome to Maude's Book Club. We're doing things on a Friday evening this time round. As you know, we've been covering the Red Rising series for over a year. We'll do a book, dive in, and then need a breather big time because these books make you think long after the last page has turned on the books. But something that's really, really fun with Maude's Book Club is having a debrief with Pierce Brown, the author himself of the books, after we do the book. Now, if you are just joining us, we will go into spoilers for Dark Age specifically here. So if you've not finished the book, we are going to go into spoiler territory. I don't want to ruin your day. I've had a lot spoiled for me with these books, and I don't mind it as much, but some people don't want that. So if you're that person, come back to this once you've read the book. But because we've only got an hour of power with the Ledge himself, I figure we're going to get straight into some questions. Pierce, Dark Age. Dark Age.
Am I the first one you've used that on?
Hour of Power. I use it across the board for many things. A good
Yeah, it sounds like a drinking game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why we're friends.
You are Australian.
Yeah, there's a little Hour of Power happening here. I'm not going to say the whole username, but we've just got 5 gifted subs thanks to Fiddled. So appreciate the subs coming through. A lot of new followers as well. If you're just joining us, hello, welcome to Maude's Book Club. We do sci-fi fantasy. It's an online book club. If you do need accountability or want to read more, pop on over. We're on Discord. We're on Fable. We're going to be covering The Way of Kings next by Brandon Sanderson. Pierce, have you read that one?
You're not going to get back to me in a while. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're going to do the only ones longer than Dark Age.
It is 1,000 pages. I believe yours was 700? 700?
I forgot. 850?
757.
750?
Got a couple of quotes.
Yeah. They always start longer. They always start longer. Then, fortunately, editors are pretty good at what they do. They come in with the scythe.
All right. Well, that's my first question. What didn't make the cut that you wanted in there?
Believe it or not, more battle.
Okay.
Yeah, I went a little grimdark in this one, and I've always been a fan of the Warhammer books as well as the books Shadow and Claw. So there's a bit more esoteric wandering, but also more violence on planetary scale. So had to get trimmed down to make it really the character beats, so that you could get that lovely tempo with Darrow and Lysander at the beginning, like the bop 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 bop, kind of going back and forth, and then finally clashing in the desert. But before that, there was quite a bit of world building that got trimmed down. And that's often what gets left out of these books. Sometimes I sacrifice world building or quieter moments for velocity, and I think that's part of the DNA of the series. So the bloated 1,000 pages that it was, it's probably better at a trim 750.
I will say I did really appreciate book number 5 building out this world and continuing to add more technology, more sci-fi elements, but also battles on a grander scale. In the previous books, we've seen sort of like your naval fleet or like your space fleets. We've seen smaller sort of dogfights. We've seen hand-to-hand combat. But here it was like a planetary catastrophe, which... It's just so great how you redefine battle. And you're saying it's sort of influenced by other nerdy books and battles that you've been into.
Yeah.
How do you keep making up technology or making up or changing sort of how you can kill someone?
Well, when we say influence, I wouldn't say it's a one-to-one translation. It's much more so the feeling that was evoked in me when I was reading things. I haven't read a Warhammer book since I was probably 14, maybe 13. I played the games a bunch, tabletop, and then some of the strategy games. And so it was more that feeling that it evoked in me that I was trying to summon. And I think that's some of the wonderful things about, when you collect or when you read or experience other people's projects and they go into this great gumbo, this big vat of gumbo that you have, and you're sometimes not even sure what flavors are melding together. And almost like in retrospect, you think that, there's some influence of Warhammer there, or there's influence of medieval combat, or obviously I focus on the Greeks, particularly the ancients, particularly the Greeks and the Romans in some of the combat. But I think that what's different about this series is, while I do play with the kind of tone and the feeling of epic fantasy, and it is sci fantasy in many ways, it is different than a lot of traditional fantasy in that the development curve is expedited because in wartime, particularly, I mean, you can look at our recent history, you can go back 80 years and look at the shift in technology from World War One to World War Two. You know, we were fighting in trenches and had, introduced barbed wire and machine guns to the field. But before that, it was primarily single shot or repeater rifles, in the late 1800s, all the way to fighter jets by the end of World War Two. In World War One, guys were using pistols and shooting at each other in prop planes, and then you have jets that are pushing the speed of sound by the end of World War Two. And so I wanted to really capture that in Dark Age and show that the Red Rising world has continued to expand in the thermal runaway. They say that cruelty is a thermal runaway, but so is the technology they're creating to destroy each other, because we're never more ingenious than when our backs are in a corner.
And it's almost you have to predict the future of warfare as well, because once
Mm.
technology expands at such a rate, it really is like a slingshot, and it just continues to grow and grow.
I look at it as a giant game of rock, paper, scissors. A lot of times, a new technology will be invented and it'll be seen to be, um, the ace in the hole, unbeatable, and then someone will come up with a counter. And that's one of the things that I have a lot of fun with is, okay, so why isn't the answer always nuke it from space?
Yeah.
Why is the answer that we can just hunker behind our shields? For instance, in the Red Rising world, unlike in Star Wars and some other movies or books, their shields often go around the entire object or can meet the ground. But in Red Rising, I wanted to maintain that sense of medieval or siege warfare from the ancient times, which I'm such a fan of. So I've made
You are?
yeah, believe it or not. So I had the shields not be able to meet the surface of the ground because then it would cause a chain reaction. And so the technology then was then limited by me needing the human interaction or needing the vibe that I had wanted. And so I create sometimes constraints, but that's the fun thing is because then you get to have the character, you know your set of rules, and then you get to have the characters figure out novel ways of getting around situations. It's one of the reasons I admire the Matrix so well. It sets out its rules very well in the beginning, and then you get to see the characters be clever as they figure out interesting ways around situations, and you also
While
feel
having
the tension.
access to everything.
Yes.
Yeah. And you also feel the tension.
The tension. Yeah, well, the tension of the characters because you realize their back is in a corner, or you don't necessarily you know all the variables at play, and you know there's not a real answer, and so you're wondering how they're going to get out of it, and it feels more earned when that's the case. Now, of course, with planetary warfare, there's going to be a lot of chaos and ships appearing out of nowhere, so a bit different than the Matrix, which is really focused piece, but a lot of fun to play in during that period.
Okay. I especially appreciate the Drachenjägers, the Drachen.
Oh yeah, I
And I
really
feel
love
like
those.
we do have like audience questions and they're quite specific, and I will get into those. But something that we learned and talked about as a group is that all the reds that last here have sort of like an assist or aid to try and
Mhm.
be able to compete with
Mhm.
golds. You've got
Mhm.
Lyria, who's now been instilled with Figment. Rona had the Drachenjäger and like was able to sort of like have enhancements to create sort of like the mechanized abilities in war.
Mhm.
So like reds actually do stand a fighting chance, and I think that Darrow's sort of the epitome of even though you're born a red, you can become a gold. That's
Mhm.
just a paycheck and a few bad surgeries, until you're on par
When
with
you put
it.
it, when you put it like that, who needs the Mickey the Carver? Yeah.
That's
Um,
right.
right. No. And yeah, there are cheat codes that they can or how would I say it, level ups that they can,
Yeah.
find. But what I think is also interesting is showing the basic tragedy of the Red Rising world in which golds are superior in many ways. Perhaps not in the rights that they should have, nor in their human experience, but in terms of their capabilities, their ability to withstand duress, their ability to affect things disproportionately on the battlefield. And I think that feeling of gold actually being superior is part of this colossal insecurity of the Rising.
Mm.
It you can see sometimes play out in the characters and perhaps in how they overcompensate and also want bigger and badder tech.
Mm. But I think that what you do a really good job of, especially the longer this goes on, is that everyone's walking a path. Reds, golds, blues, you
Mm,
name it. And every path can divot between, do you stay true? Do you stay with your honor? Do you
mm,
stop choosing sort of like anger as the way to thrust your emotions and like your path? So like,
sure,
Lyria could have easily been the next Harmony.
sure, right.
You see both of those. Orion
What?
could have like not hit the self-destruct button on herself in a way,
Hmm.
making those
Hmm.
decisions
Hmm.
for the sake of vengeance. So it's like really interesting that, even though the majority of the golds have the most power and the one who are like striving for honor the most are usually the more corrupt or usually choosing sort of like not the best way to go about it for the sake of everyone else.
What I think is interesting is that the golds are not so much angry that the reds rebelled as they are insulted because the golds are used to having power.
Yeah.
The golds are raised to believe that they are entitled to it. And in some ways, then, they actually don't have to face the same problems that a red with power would have to face. Because a red, look at Titus back in the early aughts of Red
Yeah.
Rising, Titus was not used to having a vehicle for his catharsis. And then he was given the body of a war god. And what did he do with it? He vented his almost childish rage, right? And I think we see that in our own world too. But what's interesting to me is exploring this being something that Darrow has always had to struggle with. And now characters who critiqued him are having to struggle with it too and
Mm.
face in a more condensed time frame the same things that Darrow had to face. How do they handle it?
Mhm.
But then we go back to one of the original quotes. The test of a man is what he does when he has power,
Yeah.
which is first book stuff.
And then it's absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's why we're delving with what the gold structure is always going to
Yep.
be.
Yep. And look what 10 years of being a war god did to Darrow. Did he make good decisions in Iron Gold?
No, did he make good decisions in
No, I
this
don't
book?
think he did.
No.
I think he made the decisions that he could. The problem is, I think that the train was too far off the tracks, and he did everything he could to make it not go faster and harder, you know. And in the end, he chose his army. It didn't work out, but he did choose his army as opposed to annihilating Atalantius. But there's something also interesting to be said there. Should he have just done that?
Yeah, but the goalposts keep moving. That's the thing that Darrow's learning. You think that if you do this one thing, that it'll end, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a never-ending
Mm-hmm.
beast. It's the
Good point.
Hydra's heads. Yeah.
Very good point.
Um.
That's exactly what Virginia would have told him. Stay alive, endure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So some specific questions. Now, a reminder to those that have become a book club member, you do get access to a document where you can ask Pierce your biting questions that you have for Dark Age specifically. A reminder, we're not talking Lightbringer in the chat. We will be covering that book eventually. We need a breather. We're talking Dark Age right now. City comes in hot with, was Pax an accident? Or did Mustang allow herself to be pregnant on purpose?
Well, I think that when you're dealing with the level of biological mastery that the Golds have and intelligence, I mean, she certainly let it come to term. That was not an accident. I think that she was just not on birth control because she was at war. And, a lot of the women in my life talk about the effects on their hormone levels of birth control. So I imagine she wasn't really focused on that. I don't think she thought she was going to be having sex.
All right. Makes sense. I like it. Was Figment actually a brown? Or was that just the disguise that she had on when Lyria met her? These are from City, by the way.
That Figment was actually a brown.
Okay.
The Figment, however, might not have only been that person. So, yeah, the technology could ostensibly have different hosts.
Oh, so the brown just became a vessel.
Yeah, so is the brown Figment or is the device Figment?
The brown was a host. Okay, interesting.
Oh, it's just a question.
Okay,
Certainly not.
we'll pose it. Okay, yep, I'll read into it. Vaden says the chapter Severus Palace reminded us of his history and that of Darrow, as well as how their different choices altered their respective paths. It was also hilarious, touching, and strengthened Darrow's resolve in his future decisions. Since Severo was absent for almost all of the book, was this chapter a result of wanting to maintain his presence?
Not tactically, but probably accidentally. Yeah, I certainly missed him in this book, and sometimes, and actually, I think that some of the missing chapters were things of more Severo integration. But just how do I say it? I've seen a lot of series overuse the favorite character because he is the favorite character, and the story didn't naturally include Severo as much in this one. So
And you did
perhaps I
you
found myself.
sorry, did you
Pardon
set
me?
out to do that? Did you set out?
No,
Yeah, right.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't audience denial. It wasn't me getting tired of him or anything like that. It simply is the stories. I'm not a. Um, I discover things in my first drafts, and I prefer the hacking my way through the underbrush, kind of blind, and then looking at my first draft as somewhat of an outline, because I can then sense the insincere moments. And it seemed that the Severo stuff that was in it took the energy from the other story as at play, which was the duality between Darrow and Lysander, the experience of Mercury, and Virginia for the first time. And I thought that since it was the first time we had Virginia, it's okay to have Severo only really be seen through her eyes and to feel this kind of outside presence and to feel somewhat removed from the core heart of the story because Darrow is very far away from his home, from his mental, I'm sorry, from his familial home, the Howler, so to speak. He's out on his own. He's with new people. He's with people that haven't earned the audience's love as much as the reader's love as much as many of the other characters. And that sense of alienation just felt so right for this book and for the themes I wanted to explore that Severo felt too much like home.
Yeah.
But then touching back on him, so I guess then on accident I discovered that I wanted that nostalgia of going into Severo's room and have that warmth, but then also feel the how should I say the dissonance between that warmth being something that's lost because Severo's not there.
I mean, sorry, not Golden Sun. Dark Age really is the consequences of the actions of Iron Gold. And I feel like, Severo is the most loyal friend, but he's only going to stick around for so long. And there's something that's trumped Darrow, and that's children. And I do think it was a really beautiful way to kind of try to re-anchor Darrow. But it's Severo's way of going, you've gone too far. Like, when does it stop? And I do love that, without a conversation and hitting you over the head, you are able to see from Severo what was the most important to him. And it was a beautiful moment and it was funny. And I do
think
miss
that
Sev.
and his life choices led him in a different direction, but also his trauma, which is different than Darrow's. In many ways, if you remember in book one, a lot of Darrow's alienation comes from the fact that his father died for a cause that was pretty worthless in his mind, and he denied then his kids the right to a father. And Darrow thought, well, what was that all for? But then Severo got to see firsthand, and for years didn't know why his father didn't have time for him, didn't know what took him away, and so had in many ways this kind of a similar setup, but took something very different away from it, and in the end decided on something very noble, which is family, but also very selfish considering the responsibility he's taken on. And so both of them are right and both of them are wrong. Darrow is right to honor the commitment to the Free Legions. Severo is wrong for abandoning it. Darrow is also a bad dad.
I know you can't be both.
But is a man a bad dad who doesn't want his kid to have to shoot a gun in
do you
self-defense?
save millions of people, or do you save the few that you care about more than anyone else? And I think it's nice that dudes have posed that question from time to time. Can you be both? Can you be a good parent or have your career? KP Dubs is in the chat and said, I didn't get a chance to write this in the doc, but I really want to know, Pierce, what was your reasoning for not listing Cassius in the dramatis personae? Were you trying to hide something or drop a hint?
Well, Cassius was dead.
Yeah, but he wasn't. If you don't see a body, they're really dead.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really kill him off page. And
You know
I
that
felt
we
like
wouldn't be talking if you'd killed Cassie. You know
no,
how I
no,
feel
no.
about my boy. He's my boy.
Yeah, no. You're as soon as 3D printing gets advanced enough, I know what Maud's up to.
No. Oh my God, I'm pissed.
Oh boy. Print a
I
boy,
just
we'll
like
call
him.
it. Print a boy.
All right. So it was an element of, trying
Oh,
to
yeah, yeah,
keep
yeah.
him
But it's also
smoking
knowing
mirrors.
that I knew that the reader, I know the rules. I know that if a character like that, no body, no death. But I also knew that the only way that the ending would land is if you'd forgotten about Cassius. And so I tried very hard to bury him, but then also laid little breadcrumbs throughout the story that would make his journey to Darrow in the end logical.
I appreciated it. I
And
liked it a lot.
inevitable but surprising.
We've got some more specific questions here. Wilpos says, one of my favorite lines ever is how you start chapter 17. He said, we brush away light resistance at the Darrow Storm God. Did you have this sentence in mind early in the book and write towards it, or did it just come to you in the moment?
I had I had in my head the feeling of it was a Tuesday. Yeah,
And it's so wonderful
that
having this perspective.
was the
You're like,
yeah.
it was
I
such a
wanted
slog.
everything to build up to that moment, and for Darrow, it's a Tuesday, and he's taking
Mm.
out the trash. And then the brush away light resistance just that did come to me in the moment, and I just laughed.
Yeah, it was great. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it was such an easy chapter for Darrow to write. I'm like, because I was gonna write Darrow's like finishing off people or reasons he couldn't finish off and stuff, and then I'm like, no,
No, that's not
onward,
what's going in. Yeah.
Darrow,
And
and yeah.
we're just having like pages and pages of what this was and like how heightened it was and all these emotions. And it's a sentence. It was a flippant
The
thought.
problem is, you know, you how would I say it's kind of like imagine you're the best high school basketball player, and then you come into the game as a sub, and Michael Jordan is in his prime and in his flow state. He's just running over you. It's just
Yeah.
bye, and it's
Yeah.
just you, I think that we've all played sports or played games with people who are in their flow state, and you're like, shit, that was remarkably easy for them.
Yeah. And we're
Yeah,
not on the same level.
I'm glad that line hit because
We loved
I
it.
thought it was so funny.
Yeah. Another one from, we got,
Lysander's so serious. Like he's for 2 books just building up this confrontation, and then
but
his face is
also Lysander worshipped him during the
Mhm.
institute. Like he
Oh
learned
yeah,
his plays, he studied him. Like
yeah,
it's a
yeah. It's a bit
beautiful
different to see that.
transition
Hey, you can study a tiger all day long. It's a bit different when you're in the cage.
with them. Yeah.
Hmm.
Cash 22, what was the motivation behind creating the abomination / the jackal clone? Spoilers.
Somewhat what I talked about in I've talked about cloning throughout the series and how it is seen as anathema to Gold's understanding of life and their credo. Their idea is you get one shot and it's your shout into the wind and that's all you got.
Unless
And
you're Sophocles the fox. And if you're a beloved pet, there's no such thing as too many times.
yeah, I mean, let's be
Oh.
honest here. Yeah, I think everyone in the society would agree. But Adrius always did stuff that was inverting what it meant to be a gold in many ways. He showed how much of a apostate he was. Look at how he dies, or how he goes in Morning Star. He's willing to detonate nukes all across Luna, destroy centuries worth of things in a petty act just to survive. No other gold has that sort of dead man switch ever. Um, Octavia, when she's dying, she's like, take care of, like, good luck almost, or like, you don't know how heavy the burden is. Like, but she's not wishing them to like fail. The jackal would just burn the world. And I think that that's part of, and Lilith and the Bone Riders are, they're Lilith is partly in love with him
It's
and like want.
Lilith, not Lilith.
Oh, sorry, I thought I did a spoiler.
No.
Different. You totally freaked me out there. I was
I'm
like,
so sorry. No.
I revealed who the queen was.
It's your character. I want to get it
Yeah,
right.
Different planets, different accents, right?
I mean,
I mean,
sure.
you're just from like the neighborhood over, and you talk funny.
Don't you
I
dare. We're
imagine
not
they
having
say
this
Lila a
conversation.
little bit differently.
I will throw hands, son.
Nar, nar,
No.
not today.
Sorry, you were
Um,
saying that Lilith
Lilith.
wasn't lying low there, was willing
Mm.
to press a button at the command of
Yeah,
Adrius
but
and
she's
carry him in the
one
belly.
worship. Yeah, she's one worships him. One is kind of in love with him, but it's this like weird predatory kind of love. And when he didn't have time for her at all when he was alive. She was just sharpest tool he could poke things with, and she thinks that gives him loyalty to her, gives her meaning that he cared about her. But no, she was just his sharpest screwdriver.
Yeah.
And so I thought it would be interesting. I thought it would make a lot of sense for what he would do. Particularly, he knew that he was rolling all the dice going in there, trying to be sovereign, and his rise was even more drastic than Darrow's in many ways. And he did it in such a quick period of time, also being dismissed by his father, dismissed by society at large, and not being one of these kind of stupid, big, brawny, honor-bound idiot knights like Cassius. He looked down at that kind of knight.
Don't
In
say,
his
don't
mind,
call him an idiot. Don't call.
in his mind,
Okay.
in his
Okay.
mind,
Do
the
you
word, the
think
word
then?
like Cassius would be called a bimbo. Bimbo usually initially was used to refer to handsome men who were airheads, and so the jackal would call him a bimbo.
And I would disagree with the jackal, and that's
Yeah.
why I would be dead. Do
Believe
you?
it or not, it's probably healthy to disagree with him.
Yeah, good, good. Everyone's saying
Yeah,
himbo. I would like to bring
bimbo,
Bimbro into the conversation. I think
bimbo,
Bimbro. No, Bimbro.
bimbo is pretty good. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah.
Do you think then that the fact that we have understood that Adrius was preparing to clone himself should it all fail is directly proportionate to the emphasis and how hard he fought to take bigger risks, knowing that there was a backup plan?
I think so, and I think in his arrogance, he thought that he would come out the same, and I think he thought his personality not to be shaped so much by the people around him, but to be, a almost like not destiny per se, but is so strident, so unique that it, you know, he wouldn't be any different. But he's very different, and it's not him, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just he very much does not believe other people exist, kind of, right? He doesn't
Hmm.
believe and empathize with them. He doesn't, when he's blowing up people, he doesn't care. He is the only true sociopath in all the books.
Yeah. Well, he also believes that he's like manipulating fate,
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And why would he respect fate? Why would he
He's above
respect
that.
any rule? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about what you can get. Your game. It's the game.
Okay, the next question, because I don't like
Yeah,
Adrius. Um, yes or no? Were those Lyria's brothers fighting? Were they the sharpshooters? Oh, come on.
a lot of people in that army.
It's a yes or no answer.
A lot of people in
This
that army.
little shrug. Okay,
Wasn't
next.
right.
Um,
I wasn't there. I just
when
got the transcripts.
get out. When did you land on your decision to kill Ephraim?
Very much in the moment.
Oh, so there's so many characters that as you're writing, you're like, it makes sense just now. I hadn't planned it. I didn't know that this was their destiny or fate. But as I'm writing it, it makes
Yeah.
sense in the now to do so. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I find sometimes that you will plot and scheme and plan and um, beat your head on the keyboard for months to try to find the perfect ending for a character,
Mhm.
and then realize that that fixation and that attachment is throwing off your entire book, and then you'll realize that, oh, I'm trying to save all my gunpowder to the end to have this big, you know, festival of fire. But often get frustrated with books that save all their ammo for the end because it feels sometimes that I think sometimes then that can ruin the experience of a book because then if it's all packed in the end, it feels a little rushed. I like having these kind of seismic things happen at unpredictable times in the books. And I think then really a death or birth or a trauma or a twist at a surprising time can really, how would I say, affect the energy of the book in the chapters all around that. And so it fills the reader with more memories of the book than
Right.
something that would just be at the ending. That's my theory.
Also, it doesn't
Um,
provide any reprieve. You are holding your breath the entire time because you know that no one is safe in
mhm.
saying that. So thank you. This one was
Yeah, and this book
this is
is,
like
it's kind of
truest
meant to be just a
punches.
bare enough brawl and someone just hitting you repeatedly.
And you're trying to cover it, but it's still landing because then your
And they
kidneys
won't
are
and they won't
open.
stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you stop?
And we're just waiting for like, can you just pick me back up? And you're like, I will, so I can punch you back down. And in
Mhm.
saying that, out of all the deaths, and I am spoiling in this sentence, if you don't want to know, tune out right now. But out of all the deaths, including Kavax, Ephraim, Sephi, Ulysses, which one was the hardest for you?
From because he's so fun in scenes. He's so fun, his perspective. I've done so much work in making him utterly contemptible at the beginning, to understandable, to lovable, to his arc was my favorite in the end. He was my favorite character to write, and I really didn't have to rewrite his scenes very much at all.
Mm.
I had not his dialogue at all. It's just this really fun, cynical look into things. Because you have Darrow who gets so lost in the grandeur of it. You have Lysander who's jerking off to the gold Kool-Aid and his own self-importance. You have Virginia who has to be smarter than everyone. You have Lyria who has to balance bitterness with ignorance, and she can't be too capable because then everyone will be like, Deus Ex Machina. But you have Ephraim who's sly, who's uh, over everything. He's just tired of it all. So then, like when you have a moment where he does drugs and jumps out of a plane or a landing craft with obsidians, it's like he gives you such a fun look into the world, and it's kind of all believable for his character because he has a lot of latent capability. He's never the strongest. He's never the smartest. He just kind
But
of
he lands
he
on
says,
his feet.
what's that line he says to it's about being slick enough to get by
Yeah.
or to get through. I think he
And I
told
feel like as a
Lyra.
reader, you respect that.
Yeah, yeah. And also when, he's so cynical that when like he's really impressed by something, it's like, wow. When Darrow is like, it's a big, it's a huge ship or whatever, you're just like, okay, drama queen. When Ephraim does it, you're just like, well, yeah, he feels small. He feels in danger. He can't run through 100 golds.
Mm.
So Ephraim had this very kind of, what I say, I think there's this beautiful. So in his sharpness, he presents a uniquely like fragile form because he's so sharp, because he can cut people, because he's so hard on himself, because he has so much trauma, because he's not necessarily a good person like Darrow is, like Mustang's trying to be, like Lyria is deep down. Ephraim can do things that piss you off as a reader, but also take the story in a very nice direction.
Mm. And again, just like have gorgeous light and dark moments. I find that,
I really love him. Yeah.
yeah, well, you killed him, so
Yeah, but it's the same thing of like Ragnar. The it
don't.
hurt because he was so clear, very clear. And that Ragnar scene is still probably that those two are probably the most painful. Um but then there's a lot of other ones you think about, like Lorne getting killed in a way before you really got to see him do his thing. It's just
And
such brutal.
Alexander after him. I actually had a little bit
Mhm,
of a chat with the book club about this where I was like, you are not going to get a full
mhm.
Arcos story. The Arcos arc is very short. So as soon as you kind of like are invested in it, as soon as you see the potential, as soon as this could be a game changer, goodbye.
Mhm.
I didn't like that.
It's not always fair, and
No,
I
I know
think that
that.
that's part of what makes an interesting story, because it's so frustrating that Lauren didn't get to go out like a hero. It's so
Mm.
frustrating. And some people do. Ragnar went out like a hero, even though it was a tragic death, right? and he also got to deliver one of the greatest themes of the book, and serves as this totem to his people, this light. And in many ways, he's the morning star for the Obsidians. And the thing about, Lorne is so much is talked about him, so many wisdoms, and then he gets his throat cut by Lilith. But I
Mm.
think that's part of the ugliness of it that makes it more interesting, because she didn't deserve to have that kill,
Mm.
and Alexander didn't deserve to get shot by Lysander.
No, what a cheap shot too.
But golds don't deserve to be on top.
Yeah, right.
And also, Darrow didn't deserve some of his kills. Aja shouldn't have died. Like
That
she
was
got the rough end of the stick,
that was 3-on-1. I mean, it was more of a fair fight than what we've seen.
Yeah, but betrayed by her own Olympic Knight, one of the first to ever go against his order. I mean, it's
My
kind of shady.
boy. I like him for a reason. I'll himbo all day. I don't care.
And then it's like
I,
someone coming back from the dead and jumping on her back and stabbing her in the face. Anyway.
yeah, I mean that was it was a great end of the book. I love Morning Star. I loved it all. Okay, so we've got some questions about Dark Age in general. Given this is from Matt V. Given on how the Red Rising series takes place in the future, I'm curious how big a role media/art from the past plays in society. Have people seen Star Wars? Is the Mona Lisa still a big deal? Does Darrow listen to the Beatles?
I think you have to. I mean, if you look at how the Golds eliminated most of Earth's religions, I think it's safe to say that most things didn't get passed on. And the bloodless genocide, neutering all the Homo sapien race, is a pretty effective way of culling tribal instincts for the religious side of things, and also having a sort of tabula rasa. So I imagine some things get carried over, and I think that Coca-Cola is still out there. It's just called something else,
Right, right.
But historical references get looped in. Some of my favorite things are, there's like I talk about world building, and I'll write these, several page histories on a character, and then it won't work for pacing, but then I get to drop him, a character in every now and then and build their myth, and that's very fun, especially if it's an imaginary one, like or one that's a historical figure to them, but for us is still in the future, like John
Oh, that's
Merriwater.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, those are really fun characters for me because it's getting to play with shadow and light.
Mm. I like that you're also like it's so far ahead that it's still to come. We don't know what's happening.
Yeah, John Merriwater's not been born yet.
Not yet. Hey, if you're a fan of the books and you call your son that, fate could actually instill him to be the person that the words say he will be.
Yep, he rides the USS Davy Crockett.
That's it. It's all there. All you have to do is
rides the USS Davy Crockett to the moon with his mech battalion of Texans.
In fact, you could just clone yourself and then imprint all of what the books could be and have them act it out. It's easy. It can be done. City says, when writing a new book, do you write it in one part after the other, or do you write one character's point of view and then go back to do the next? Or is it something else? How often do you have to rewrite previous sections to fit in something that you write in a later part?
Good question. You always have to rewrite everything. Like, I'm not very good at first drafts. First drafts are just maelstroms of anxiety for me, and I often feel lost in them. I love second drafts. Second drafts, you start seeing the shape of the story. Third drafts, you actually start beginning to believe you have a story and you're smart, possibly. Fourth draft, you're like, well, it's all working, and you just can't believe you got there. So for me, it's always about rewriting. But I'd say each story has it differently. I think that in Iron Gold, I wrote it based on characters, and I would do one character all the way through, and then match up all the other characters. I think I started with Darrow, and then but I didn't like the way I was new to the multiple POV format, and I didn't like the way that it flowed. And in many ways, I think I was emulating the ones I'd seen before, like with Robert Jordan and George R. R. Martin. And then I realized when I was reading those books, I was always pretty frustrated. And so I switched up my tact, and instead now I write in sequences. And so what I like doing is pairing characters or characters who will be influencing each other and have them in sequences. So I'll write maybe back and forth, or write they're part of that sequence, and then write the other characters part of that sequence. So for instance, with Dark Age, I started with um, Lysander actually, and then because I was very interested in his relationship with Diomedes, and also this perspective of joining the Gold War Machine. And so then I did his kind of, just for an example, I did him all the way up through descending down onto the planet in the rain with Ajax. And then I did one Darrow chapter as a placeholder, kind of Darrow going to the Storm Gods and setting that all up. And then I did Lysander up until him falling in the rain. And then I started going kind of go back and forth in these chunks. And then once I had that beginning chunk where they meet in the desert, and then I carried on with Darrow to Heliopolis, and then um, when Darrow has his heart attack, that's where it ended where Thraxa comes in and throws down the standards and says victory. And then I was like, fuck, the sequence is done. And so
Yes.
then I moved on to other sequences in the book, based mostly on what I'm confident about, what I'm excited about, etc.
I'm getting better about not interrupting you when I hear a name pronounced differently.
What name
Diomedes?
surprised you?
Dio
Diomedes.
Diomedes?
Either one.
How
I mean, it's all
else?
transliteration anyway. Like Achilles is Achilles.
Yep. So then it's Achilles, isn't it? And we all need to learn and adopt.
I mean, some people also say it's Achilles. So, you know.
Well, they're wrong. I'll say that confidently. Don't do that ever again, guys.
It's funny though, we will, yeah, right. We won't, like, if someone says they went to Paris, you're like, you're a jackass.
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
Like if someone goes to Munich, they don't say München. But then for certain other cities, you do say that. You're like, it's I don't know. On, not Cannes.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, when do you pronounce it? When do you don't? When do you not?
Well, I used to say cans, but now I say can because that's what that supposedly is. You just, you say what you think it is until you know better.
Yeah, but why don't you say Paris? Because it would make you an asshole.
I don't want to be an asshole.
You belong in Paris.
Okay, fair point. Fair point. But I mean, I feel like here, like if you're writing it, then I will adhere to you. I feel like you know best.
I'm not. That doesn't really bother me.
Okay.
I know some authors care. Like one of my kind of mentor authors, Terry Brooks. He's like, it's Shannara, not Shannara.
I say Shannara.
I know, but everyone says Shannara. Everyone.
No, not me anymore. From this day forth, and I get to do that. Actually,
yeah, you'll say Shannara near him, and his wife will just be like,
not it. That's
not it. It's Shannara, Pierce. It's Shannara.
Shannara. All right, it's Shannara.
Yeah.
Next question.
I think it's Red Rising to me, not Red Rising.
I kind of wish that was true at this stage. At this stage, like just troll us all so hard. By the way,
that'll be the Cassius Ender Shadow type book.
Actually, Lisa just straight out went, nope. Okay, Fredo, no Pierce. Okay, no veto. You've been vetoed on that one.
I'll get offline and go back to my history books.
Are you ready for a compliment?
Always.
Good. Will says, while your writing has always been excellent, many people, including myself, felt that the writing in Dark Age was a step up from your previous books with some truly masterful prose. Did you do anything different for this book in terms of preparation or the writing process itself, or was this simply a natural progression as your fifth book?
You might not like my books as I go on as a writer. You might not like each book more than you like the next, but the writing will get sharper each time. Because I wrote Red Rising when I was 22. I was still learning the ropes. And so I just didn't have the skills yet. I hadn't read quite as much. I hadn't learned enough. And then you learn through failure. And it's what I do, And I appreciate you saying that. I was very proud of certain sections in Dark Age, and there are certain things that really made me very happy. I think that for me, though, it's hard sometimes to believe it, because I think your taste should always outstrip your talent. and so my taste definitely outstrips my talent. So sometimes that can make you a little hard on your own stuff. So when you hear that when you hear that, how would I say, the your pull-ups, your workout has been appreciated, it really is nice to hear. So thank you very much for that, and I hope you think the same thing with Lightbringer.
Well, yeah, I haven't done that one yet, and I'm excited for it.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, I mean, was that 12 years, 10 years in between the first to Dark Age? You can
Um,
absolutely tell.
22 to Dark Age, I wrote in 2000, kind of 17 and 18. Came out in 19. So yeah, I mean like 7 years, something like that. Then
Okay.
it's Lightbringer that took me a long time. Lightbringer took 4 years and threw off my whole
Yeah, it was a
book.
pandemic, dude.
Yeah, midlife crisis. Yeah,
Some people
and also
flourished in a
like
pandemic, not many.
yeah, well, Lightbringer had like 2,000. I don't even know. It had like 2,000 or more pages. Probably wrote like a million words for it, and then like scrapped so much of it. There's just
I remember
like
that. It was
I
like a
threw out
third of a book, wasn't it? You'd like,
no, I threw out way more than a third of the book. I didn't like admit to how much I'd thrown out because I was like I had to start over like twice. But I still only said I had to start over once because I didn't want to freak people out.
hold on,
Yeah.
is it like walking a labyrinth and you just like you realize you took too many wrong turns, so you had to go all the way back to the
Yeah.
start and then try
Yeah.
that path?
It's like I was
Well,
exploring things because I wanted the book to feel I just have read so many series where the longer the books go on, the more you're like, why they're just milking this, right? And I knew there was more for the more journey for the characters, and I knew that we weren't at resolution yet I couldn't find the way through, and then finally I found the way through. But I think that there was just so many false beats where I was just phoning it in, and I felt like it's just me trying to get it done,
right.
and you're not your most elegant when you're you know, when you're drowning and reaching for anything, right? And so, yeah, I just kept hammering at it until it felt right to me.
How do you feel when people say that they want to read that regardless, even if they can also agree and be like, "Oh, okay, I understand that this was made more
Mm.
sense overall, but like it's people wanting to get into your brain and learning what your thought process even was in a first draft."
Well, it'd be hard because it wouldn't be. I mean, there'd be certain passages that would feel tight and hopefully elegant, and there's definitely cool stuff in there. But sometimes it's like characters dying, like in the first third of a book who then don't even end up dying in the book. So it's
Right.
so different. It's like an alternate reality sometimes.
So a
Because
character has been resurrected technically.
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh
Who?
yeah. I can't.
All right, tell me
It's
then.
all woven together. I don't want to ruin anything.
Okay, fair, fair, fair.
Oh,
Some great
there was
comments happening. What?
there's definitely a point where Victra, I think, like bit the dust in Iron Gold, and it sent several off on a crazy path. But I was like, ah, that's boring.
While she was
Yeah.
pregnant? God, Ulysses didn't even stand a chance before he was born. What the hell have
Well,
you got against
you
this
know, and
baby?
there's also part of me that was like, oh, keep Ulysses alive. Great for a spinoff. Great for a spinoff. He's your Anakin Skywalker from the new Anakin, not the old Anakin.
Hmm.
But because he's obviously the best of Han Solo and Leia's kids. Um, Ben's kind of boring. But anyway,
You're right.
or no, Jason, Ben, no, Ben's Luke's. Jason and Jano were Han and Leia's. But Anakin was cool, very powerful. Sorry.
That's okay.
What was the question?
Um, I, I was basically saying
Oh,
what characters.
Ulysses. You know, he stood a chance for a while, but I think that my exploration of the Red Hand was the exploration of the other side of rebellion and the other side of, and there's quite a big difference between Darrow and Co. might kill more people, but there's a very big difference in what the objective is, and a very big difference than the terrorism, for lack of a better term, that the Red Hand's perpetrating, and are trying to literally um, vent their anger as opposed to affect a better world. And I needed to
How
explore
have
that in a way that really hit the characters.
hmm, how has it been for to kind of, I guess, learn about the reactions and responses at a visceral level that some people have had over these characters that you've
Hmm.
created? How has that been to receive?
You know, sometimes it's a bit of a bummer because it can be accused of, or it can sometimes make people mad enough to quit reading, and that's a
Right.
bummer. Um, but I hope that it all feels contextual. I hope that it feels natural to the world, and that I'm not just going for tears. Um, that I build this world as a harder reality. I think, which is part of the reason why it's found an audience. And if I don't live up to that world I've created, then it feels like I'm just glorifying war. Feels like I'm just kind of, well, I want the tone, but I don't want the sacrifice, or I want the tone, but I don't want the risk. And I think it's sometimes risky when you kill characters that are really beloved, because you can take them out, like, and it's really like what would the Guardians of the Galaxy be if you took out, Drax, or if you took out any individual character? You throw off the entire chemistry of it, and so it's a risk each time you do it. Or are you throwing off the entire chemistry?
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, I know that when you write it, you can find out if it feels true or not. And that's all that matters to me, is if it feels true to my story. So I can't really take into consideration what people will think. But that's also great, because that means I'm not doing it just to get a reaction, which I
Yeah.
think readers are smart enough to see through and would energetically feel that, and then would be mad at me for that reason. So I
Got
think
it.
on the whole, the reception to this is good, and makes me really happy because I see people getting really invested in the characters, and I think that makes them stand out in the mind's eye a little bit better. I think it makes people remember them more. I think they become more distinct.
Who would you say, given some of the feedback that you have been receiving over the years, the top two most beloved characters and the top two most hated characters? Who would they be?
I would say the most divisive character overall is Io. I don't know if
Mm.
she's the most hated. She's certainly not the most loved, but she's the most divisive. Um, but then again, we're leveling pretty harsh critiques at a 16-year-old woman or girl with very little
Yeah.
agency. Yeah,
Mm.
very little agency to do anything except for protest with death. So I think sometimes, you get mad at characters for what they do to your other characters, for what they like make them go through. But I'd say Io's the most divisive, the most beloved. Did you ask?
Yep. Beloved and hated.
Beloved Severo,
Yep.
um, and Ragnar probably, and surprisingly Trig. Trig gets a
Oh,
lot of love.
yay.
Trig gets a lot of love. The most hated, I think you know the answer to that.
Lysander?
Yeah, he's the most hated. I find him really
I
compelling.
I do too. And I even said this
Mhm.
to my book club when we were talking about it. I was like, I know this is going to upset some people, but I don't hate Lysander. I actually love learning how to understand Lysander. And I
I
think
think it's
it's,
just that he's just such a motherfucker, right? You're just like, why are you letting me down? You're better than this.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah. And
interrupted you.
he'll also like contradict himself, like
Hmm.
in his meaning and in learning. And I think that these are the failures that sort of the people before him have made. And it's like, I don't know, him talking about would you rather be loved or would you rather be feared? Like he's learning about him and about the bigger picture as we're
Hmm.
reading it as well. I'm sure, yeah, no, everyone's saying fuck Lysander. Okay, cool, cool, cool.
Yeah.
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 Do do you think that since
Who knew that would be like the takeaway from the series? I love it though. So yeah, no, I mean, it really makes me like, if anyone gets emotionally invested, even if they're mad at me about something, I love it because it means you bought in, and it feels as like, that makes it feel more real for me, and makes me feel like I'm creating something of worth, and it's more fun to play in that world.
okay.
Sorry, I again interrupted you.
No, I'm just thinking though, like you're finishing this series. Like we've got one
Yeah.
to go and you're in the midst of writing it right now. Knowing how precious some people hold these characters, is that influencing how you're writing the book at all?
Yeah, but I can't let it.
Yeah, okay. Hmm.
Yeah, because then y'all won't get the ending you deserve, which may not be the ending you want. And I'm not saying I know what it is. I have a hunch that I know what it is, but I won't let it be final until it feels right to me, no matter how long it takes. So I've got a hunch, but I got to see if it works,
I mean, the thing that we need to learn about you, if we haven't already, is that you don't go in with a roadmap. You don't go in with an overarching sort of um, plot point. You like to write your characters, and as you're writing these characters, almost have the character inform the decisions. And
Yeah,
so,
because I'm not smart enough to think about how they would to think about how they would think about a situation or how they would feel about a situation. And I'm not smart enough. These people are all supposed to be smarter than me, right? So they see opportunities based on what other people are doing in the thing. Now an AI could probably do a very good job at guessing, but part of the thing I think that makes the books fun is when someone sees an opportunity, they roll the dice and then it makes the book go in a different direction. And I think it keeps this kinetic feeling to it. But the thing is, it's me exploring that in the first draft. It's not like the final draft you get is me just shooting from the hip, right? It's I test it out in the first draft and I explore and I see things, and then I'll make it. Then that second draft will be like, does this feel right? I didn't like that section. Why do I not like that section? Well, because they never fucking do that. And so then you just reverse it, right? Like there's times where I'm just like, they would never do that, and they just, do that.
yeah, it needs to
Like,
make sense.
like in my
Um,
head, Lysander and Alexander were gonna have a big duel. It was gonna be a big duel.
there's
And
no
then we
time for
got
that.
there,
There's no time
and
for
I
it.
got there, and I'm like, all Lysander has learned is practicality. Why would he duel this guy?
He was already
He's
behind
just seen it
schedule.
time and again. He's just seen
Yeah.
it time and again. You just got to win. And
Um,
so then I'm like, fuck, and I did it, and I was like, oh, that's gross. It works.
yeah.
Yeah, but in my head, it was this big, great duel, and there was this whole thing that was going to be like, talking more about the cousins and seeing the duality was going to be between Lysander and Alexander,
Oh,
and showing
yeah.
the two different directions they could go. And then I was like, no, it's Lysander and Darrow. Obviously, Lysander's Darrow's foil, and so in many ways, Alexander was Darrow's ticket out. He could pass it on to someone, but nope, still on you, bud.
I didn't think of it like that. You're so right. You're
It
so
was the
right.
death of his ticket out,
Yeah.
the death of his hope in many ways.
Oh, the book was kind of exploitative of the death of hope, I would say. Like,
Sure,
you
sure,
snuffed out hope.
but if Dark Age was the consequences of
Yeah.
Iron Gold, Lightbringer is the test of whether or not light can be found in the darkness.
That sounds like there's hope. Thank God.
And then they just have to find it.
Yeah. All right. If
Or
you'll find it
realize
if you're
they're
looking
it,
for it.
boyo. No,
Or realize what? You're about to spoil something?
no, just doing a quote from when Severo and Darrow were over Ragnar's body, and they said they keep looking for light, but we're it, boyo.
Well, one to go. Do we have an update on the TV show?
No,
Okay. I just thought it was worth asking.
ah, I wish it was me holding this thing up, but I've been doing a lot of, one of the reasons that Lightbringer took a little while is I was also, embroiled in trying to make it happen. And again, I'm trying to make it happen, and it takes up a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of love. I am still optimistic, but actually more than optimistic, but just don't have a scalp to bring back to the crew yet.
Why'd you have to say it like that? Choice of
Because I
words.
think of that sometimes when like I'm catching up with friends on the phone and they're like, so, how's writing? What's new? What's going on? I'm like, I wish I had scalps to bring back to you, but like I'm kind of just out there with my knife, like looking for them, you
Hello.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just out there like kind of like it's cold. I'm like, I thought I found a scalp over there, but it ran away. And I long to bring a scalp back to the Red Rising crew and be like, it's going. It's gonna be a $200 billion budget.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's do ideal scenarios. $200 billion budget. You're
$200 billion.
actually gonna build the ships and shoot it in space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're gonna clone
Exactly.
these characters. So like
But, we figured the
Julius
easiest way to
Caesar is gonna
yes.
be played by yeah, I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, we figured the easiest way to deal with the height disparity would just be to genetically engineer humans.
Because that's a really hard part about casting. You're like, well, they have to be 6'11", 7'2", built like a brick shit house. There's so many options to cast
There
these
will be
characters.
it'll be like anything. It'll be like anything. If some people will like it, some people will not like it. Some people will be surprised, like, Robert Pattinson in Batman, and then be like, wow, he was pretty good. I kind of like emo Batman, so
We had emo Spider-Man, so why not the emo Batman?
yeah, the big difficulty of collaboration is no one person can do it on their own in film and TV, and it's thousands and thousands of little decisions, right?
Yeah.
And you hope, the only thing you can hope for is that you have that kind of Peter Jackson, or Denis Villeneuve, or and I look at those as the best adaptations, and I think it's not because they have such fidelity to the material, but because they're dyed-in-the-wool fans of the material, and they understand they don't even just understand what makes the thing work, they believe in it. They love that thing. It's what draws them, like the North Star, and so then they're talented and they can't help but then make that thing good. And so we've got people attached who I believe feel that way about Red Rising.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, that is our time, and I just kind of want to leave it with everyone. We're trying to do a lot here, getting a show in ideal scenarios, finishing the book out. Is there something that's happened recently that you can give us a tidbit with Red God? A word, an ominous or vague even word. But it's our hope that we weren't given in Dark Age. Can you give us the hope?
A word.
So that we can come back to this moment after we've read Red God, and it's this moment and this word that we'll be able to sort of analyze and be like, oh, that's
snow falls on Luna to the lament of a young red woman and the growl of vengeance.
It's more than one word.
That's what came to mind.
Okay, we'll take it. Who wrote that down? We'll make it a quote around here.
Oh, and another one, Brazilian butt lifts.
Well, now I have questions, but I think that's what it was supposed to prompt. So there you go.
Don't you love it? If, like, they don't know Star Wars, but Brazilian BBLs.
Yeah, that's right. Mona Lisa didn't make the cut. BBL
didn't make the cut. Well, we know the Spanish surrealists made the cut, right? Spanish surrealists made the cut. But part of the thing is, one of the things I love about Ephraim is that he's annoyed that the classic neoclassical Roman stuff is so like idolized. Even Quicksilver's annoyed by that shit, right? It's kind of like when you go into a museum and you're like, enough of these like really romantic things. Where are the Spanish Impressionists? I want to see like Saturn eating his young. So anyway. I just think that
was that a hint?
That's another reason I miss Ephraim is because when he's in like teaching the Skoogie, he's like, I will teach you to appreciate the work of the Spanish surrealists.
Right.
But
you're like,
so he's protecting art.
Someone
from the homogenizing effect of the backward gaze. Gold myopia.
I'll think about that for a week. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Kind of sounds like a. Never mind.
Put a pin in that.
I need to go to sleep. I was up all night.
He was up all night doing the work, putting in the work.
I thought I had a really cool section, and I just had to do it. And so I'm 36 hours up. So I'm just gonna eat Chinese and crash.
Sounds great. I really appreciate you spending an hour with me talking about Dark Age.
Thanks for having me. Thank you guys for all paying attention and listening and being so lovely. And thank you for reading the books. And I really hope Lightbringer delights you.
Yes. Well, TBD on that one.
TBD.
But we'll get
all
there.
right.
We'll get there.
Here's soon.
Bye. Thank you so much.